Oh, hello. Welcome back. Today we're talking soldering. Okay. Um, One of the first videos I put out, which I don't have that many on my page, so if you go to my channel, it's probably the third, or I think it's like the third video I made. Um, the video's about buying specifically old, MPC 1000s and MPC 2500s because they're very similar components wise. And also, if you're, even operating system, even if you're running JJOS, it's the same operating system. So I have since taught myself how to solder, and I've fixed this MPC. I've probably bought and sold 5 or 6 MPCs since that time, and since learning how to solder and fix and replace some of the components in these machines. Now, I wasn't buying and selling these with the sole purpose of like, I'm going to fix these and I'm going to make money off them. I was just literally kind of taking a risk. Like, I'm going to buy, I would find them on Facebook Marketplace or eBay. I'd buy one and see if I could replace what was wrong with it. Because you can almost count on that there's going to at least be um, damaged tack switches, stuff like that, pads going in and out. Maybe one of the potentiometers is noisy. Um, so yeah, I just kind of, I'm not going to be soldering in this video, but I just wanted to talk about like my journey through learning it, because when I bought, this is a newer one I bought. The video I had made, I had a black one, and I was talking about how it was mint condition and what to look for when you buy them, what can go wrong, and what are kind of some of these telltale signs of like you know either if you're looking at to buy it, look at these things, and if a pad is stuttering, so when you hit it, you might get a double kick or whatever's on that pad, or if you're raising a slider up and down, it won't lock when you leave it. It'll like have these ghost movements, noisy record or main volume, buttons that you have to press down really hard or a bunch of times to get them to register. Those are all common, super common problems with these machines. So I bought a black one and I had a blue one in my possession. That was my first machine I ever owned as far as the MPC goes. And it was sitting on a shelf for since 2018 because damaged tack switches and other, faulty components it had. And I didn't know how to fix it. And if you're familiar with these machines, there's not a lot of help out there. Like if you don't know how to solder and you have to send one of these out, it's gonna cost the same price, if not more, to send it out, get insurance on the shipment, get it to the right place, have them fix it. They're gonna charge for labor and parts. Then, however long that takes, I mean, if they're trustworthy and have a reputation at being good at their job, you're not the only one they're doing business with. So then, however many months or weeks goes by, you don't have a machine, you're not making music. If you're like me, you start to go crazy. You finally get it back, and what happens when it happens again? Because when I bought that black one, I thought it was mint condition. I was like, man, this thing is in really good condition. All the buttons are working, everything looks good. And then, like 2 weeks into having it, the pad bank buttons, like B and C specifically, stopped registering. And I use all of these. These and the mode and the main, especially. So on the 1000, you don't have a numeric set of keys. On the 2500, you can register each numeric key to be one of the secondary program windows on the pad bank. So like you got to, on the 1000, you hit mode, program to go into like your filters, your pitch, and kind of manipulate your samples once it's been chopped up. So if that mode button goes, you're fucked. You know what I mean? On the 2500, there's a little bit of workaround, but it's still, you got a machine, you want it to work, right? So I say all this to kind of get to the point of like, I got to learn how to solder, because I got to, and not just solder, I got to learn, you know, kind of just the schematics of these, because I'm not switching. Like I got a MPC 1 right here. I've used the Live 2. Um they're cool, they're dope, but I can't work on them like I can work on this thing. I mean, my blue one that I just talked about a few minutes ago, um I took the faceplate off because I was trying to just see if I could see something was cracked or something. I didn't know anything about solder. And the buttons would still work, but they wouldn't register all the time. So I used that thing to make beats for like a solid 2 years without a faceplate. Like I don't need to look at like mode, where's program right there. No, like I can use this thing with my eyes closed. It's like Braille. Um, so it's like if I can't make something dope on this is, I mean, like the effects on this are cool and you get plugins, but I'm a true believer that like if if I can't make it work on here, I don't know. I like this thing and I use it more as like to be honest, I use this more as like an instrument. So like if I need a bass line, I'll go onto this thing and I will find a bass line because this has a lot more of a sample library, and I'll chop it up and then I'll just send it into this and boom, there's the bass line with the beat. Or if I need some one shots, whatever it is. But like chopping on this and the touch screen, I don't know. I'm just an old man, I guess. So anyway, I back to my story. Sorry. When I started looking into soldering, I like started taking the faceplate off the black one, and I started just doing research for a couple months on like what I need to get, and ordering like practice uh PC boards to practice like laying and removing solder. And so let's start with the solder machine itself. So the nice thing about soldering is like you don't need, I mean, you can get $1,000 soldering machine, but you don't need that to fix something. So let's just hypothetical situation. We'll use the mode button. Your mode button no longer works, right? You're gonna want to get a soldering machine, and specifically, I was on looking for something that you can change the temperature. So they make just the iron that you just plug into a wall, and it's a single temperature. But the problem with that is it's going to be really easy for you to burn up a trace or damage the contact points on your board if you're working too hot. So this goes all the way from like 390 all the way to 800 degrees. Perfect. A lot of times with these MPCs, people that don't know what they're doing, and mind you, I'm not an electrical engineer, I'm not a master at soldering, but I can fix basic problems on this. One of the hardest lessons I learned was with lead solder. So that black board, when I went to on that old black MPC, I removed the faceplate. I went to fix the pad banks. I finally I had laid enough solder on like all the test PC boards I bought. And I bought this off Amazon. It's just a bunch of different size tack switches. Because I didn't know specifically what size OEM tack switch these came with. So this came with a bunch, and it turns out that they're the 6x6x5. So 6x6, and then 5 is the height. So the height is what matters, because if you get something too high, it's gonna fuck with your buttons, and you can crack the the two little plastic prongs that hold the button in place. Um. So anyway, I didn't know that how hot to work with the lead solder, as opposed to like like a 6337 solder. Um, they melt at different temps. So I ended up having to crank the iron up to like 700 something to melt the solder that was on the board, because it was all lead, and I left it on too long and I burnt a trace. And yeah, I mean, it was a tough learning experience, because I was like, it was, I couldn't, if you burn the trace, the copper trace that ties all these contact points together, I'm not going to go up there and refocus it so you can see the details of this. Like I said, it's not a soldering instruction video. If you'd like one of those, let me know. I'll make one. Anyway, on the back, you have all these solder points. And the resistor and LED light and tack switch all together, right? And I burnt one of those. So I didn't know how to fix it. So I reached out to a dude in the repair community, and I had talked to him a few times before about fixing the machines that I had broke, and he was kind of the reason I tried to figure it out on my own, because he would never respond like, "Hey, how much? Can you give me a price? This is this and this. How like just didn't want my business." So I learned on my own. When I asked him like, "Hey, what's kind of like the standard procedure of like fixing a burnt trace?" He was like, basically told me to fuck off. So I was like, "All right." So what I ended up doing was I had to tie my own copper trace back into it, and it was a lot easier when I got all that lead solder up, because once it was burnt, I was like, well, let me just crank this bitch up, be a lot more deliberate, quicker. And the way you get it up is you have this copper ribbon. So basically, you heat the tip up, you put flux down. This is flux right here. This is like a flux paste. You need this. This like attracts solder. Um, and then you put this down onto whatever you're trying to remove, and then you put the iron on top of it, and it'll soak right into the ribbon. It was super easy. Um, Once I started working with this is 6337 solder, and it's 0.6 millimeter. I didn't want something, like 1 millimeter that's like super thick. I wanted something that I can really just not worry about feeding too much, or like, it works good. I laid a small thin gauge copper piece to tie the two traces together, laid my solder, and it works. Works fine. So it was a good learning experience. Then once I was more comfortable with that, and I got all the lead solder up on that. It wasn't this board. I sold this machine since. I redid all the tack switches. I bought new Q-Link sliders. I took the power supply apart just to, look at it and see what was in there. Yeah, it was a good learning experience, and I suggest anyone that is like avidly into these machines, you, like you can teach yourself how to do this. Even a potentiometer, like it's it's not hard to remove the solder and then re-put it down. When you're working with this 6337, you're working at a way different temp though. So like I'll work at like 625 when I'm laying this stuff, and it's quick. I mean, it's literally like you put your flux down, you put this down on the contact point, get it hot, and then you just feed this out into it. You'll see it glob up and pull it off. You want to be quick about it. You don't want to burn the trace. So anyway, yeah, this whole board I got from one of my homies for just spare parts and stuff. But I can see on the back here there's a ton of burnt traces. And when I tried taking one of the components off, I was like, "Oh, all this is lead solder." So it's just that lead solder is a nightmare. And anyway, yeah, couple other things that you'll want to get is tip tinner. So basically, like, pull the cap off this. You just dip it's hot. You dip it in there, twist it around, and it'll clean all the old solder off of your tip. You got to keep this tip clean. And yeah, another thing I have is the little gator arms to hold a board. But honestly, I found it easier to just get a silicone mat, and I have a light, and I just work with it on the silicone mat instead of those gator arms. Like, they're too flimsy. So yeah, another thing is a solder sucker. So that's another way to remove it. So you'll heat the solder up and then just put it right on there. You'll click the button, it'll suck it right up. Still need to use flux. You always, every time you put this iron to the board, whether you're removing or laying, you have to have flux on the board. Super important. So, and then tweezers, a small, this is just a magnetic screwdriver, which has a bunch of different tips, because you're going to have to get all this, to pull these boards out. You got to take all the screws out off the faceplate, take all the caps off, on the Q-link sliders, pull it off. Then there's screws on the board. Then there is ribbon cable to this IC. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 cables that all gotta be, you gotta take like a flat head and kind of gently work it off these prongs. And yeah, you'll get it out. Like I said, I'm not a professional, but you can get the schematics for these. Anything you don't know, just research it, or spend the money to send it out, or at that rate, just buy a new one. But you run into problems, you're gonna end up having to fix it at some point. My 2500 was fucked. It was out of commission. I was having issues with a bunch of the tack switches, and once I learned how to do this, I fixed the whole thing. It's fine. But it's funny because now that I have a nice working one of these, I don't really use my 2500 anymore. The only thing I miss about it is the 8 outs. So yeah, the solder machine. This is the Yahuwah 939D Plus. I got it on Amazon. It was like $60. Tip tinner, flux paste. You can also get the flux pens. I like those. They're just a liquid and you don't have to clean them like this. You got to clean this up. You got to, whatever you use it on, you got to take like a Q-tip with some 90% isopropyl alcohol and clean it up after, or it'll dry and just, it's gross. Get you a box of the 6x6.5. Might even be able to use the 4 point. This has 4.3 and 5 height. I don't think I've used the 4.3, but just get you a box of a bunch of them. Like practice with the ones like these tall ones. You're never gonna use those on this. Practice. Get a either an old board that you're never gonna use, or just order little tiny board with a bunch of contact points, and you can practice soldering the tack switches on there. There's no traces on here, so you might want to find one that has little copper traces. This is just what I had in my garage. But I used something this thick to tie that I basically scratched off the burnt part, and then I soldered this from like one part of the trace to another part of the trace that wasn't damaged. And so this carries the signal. Because that's all they are. It's just like a copper trace. Very, very thin copper trace. And it holds together all. I know you can't really see that. I'm sorry. Like I said, I don't want to refocus my lens, but it ties everything together. And a schematic will tell you how everything is connected, and every capacitor and every resistor and every, everything on these boards. So yeah, copper wire 6337. I'm telling you, that's the solder you want. Need some tiny screwdrivers, Amazon for the soldering, tip tinner, flux paste, flux pens, some practice boards. You're good to go, baby. That's all I'm telling you. At least try it. And if you're like, I hate this shit, like in my day job, I do all types of home renovations, and I'm a contractor, so I've had to do a lot of plumbing. I've had to do a lot of electrical, so it's like, I don't know. I'm just like kind of one of those people. It's like, I'll figure it out. Like, so yeah. If you guys want to see a video of me actually soldering something, let me know. I'd love to do it. And one last thing before I leave, this is something that I wish someone would have told me. It's important. If you do get into this, if you're like me, you're going to come to the point where you go, would it be cheaper just to buy, like when you pull this faceplate off, there's two boards. You have a board here for your two Q-Link sliders. You have a board here for the F keys. And then you have a main board right here. You can buy these boards on MPC stuff. They're like $270, which is pretty crazy. But you can also look for them on eBay. You might be able to find one. That's where I got to. I was like, should I just buy a new board? But then I just couldn't swing it at the time. Because one of the problems was the jog wheel. So I ordered a new jog wheel potentiometer. When it got here, I went to install it on the board, and I realized the prongs did not match my board. And when I looked at them, I realized the one that was broken that I pulled off my board was plastic, and the new one I ordered from MPC stuff was metal. Okay? You with me? They do not make the plastic one anymore. You cannot find it. They only make the metal ones. So there's a way to tell without pulling the faceplate off if you have a metal one or a plastic one. When you turn your jog wheel, if it's making that, you got a plastic one. The quieter ones are the metal ones. They don't make that like any noise, and they're a lot smoother. The metal ones are good to have because if you need to replace it, you just order it, solder. I think it's like 4 points, and then you're good to go. The plastic one, on Reddit and an old NPC forum, this dude said there was a way to scratch out some traces and reroute. You basically take some super small gauge wire and it's a thing. And I tried it, right? I did it successfully. Here's the problem. I didn't want to scratch out my trace points on that board. I was like, I'm fully committing to this if I do it. So without doing that, the jog wheel only worked backwards. So if I went back, it would go like if I was on uh sample pitch. If I went backwards, sample pitch went up. If I went forward, it went down. I probably could have gotten used to it, but I was like, nah. So basically, well, luckily for me, I had a homie who had a bunch of old boards and he had an old plastic one that worked. I pulled it off, I put it on the board, and it was fine. So if you have a plastic one and it goes, you got to order a new board because they don't make the plastic one anymore and they don't make new boards that take the plastic one. So unless you can get on that NPC forum and figure out how to scratch out those traces and rewire it like I did, because that was the only reason it was working backwards. I didn't eliminate that signal that was running through that. And I don't, I can't give you the lowdown of like exactly why, but yeah. So anyway, just be wary of that. And once again, if I don't get paid to do this shit. It's all for the love of the game. Figure it out. Peace.